you're very much involved in cruise travel. Of course, the cruise travel industry, made a bunch of headlines at the start of this pandemic. Several cruise lines, have suspended operations for the next few months and the foreseeable future. What's the latest? You have your ear to the ground. What's the latest with respect to the cruise industry? What steps are the powers that be taking to reestablish faith in people to take cruises? And how do cruise lines market themselves now going forward to give passengers and customers that confidence that it's safe to come back? Loaded question, and it's a three-parter. It's loaded, but do your best. I mean, it's a tricky question.
Those are great questions, actually.
Thank you.
So I'm going to start off with my comments on how the cruise industry suffered at the beginning of this pandemic. I've been on many, 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 many cruises, and it has always been my observation that a great deal of care goes into sanitizing the ships and making sure that passengers are safe. Long before this pandemic struck, I remember being on a Holland America ship, and for the first 2 days, no passenger was allowed to serve themselves at the buffets. They, on most cruise ships, there's what's called a Lido deck, and that's where the casual dining restaurant is, and it's almost always a giant marché style buffet. Mm-hmm. And for the first 2 days, no one was allowed to serve themselves, and there were staff all over the place to help you. On every ship I've been on in the last 10 years, probably, there is always a hand sanitization station at the entrance to every dining room and every public space. So it's not that, in my opinion anyway, it's not that the cruise ships were being particularly careless. I don't think they were at all. I think it is simply a matter of having a large number of people in a relatively small, I mean, they're kind of like small cities,
right?
But space where the air circulation is contained in the ship. So that was my opinion on why it was somewhat unfair that cruise ships were being accused of being careless. I don't think they were.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So now what's happening? Well, not much. Most cruise lines will not resume sailing until 2021. They are hopeful. They keep sending out messages saying, yes, we're going to be sailing again in September. Oops, update. No, we're going to be sailing again in October. No, actually, it'll be November. My best guess is that most cruise lines won't resume until probably spring of 2020.
2021. 2021.
2021.
Yep.
Yes. So what am I hearing from them? Well, one thing that I'm hearing is that at the moment there are no cruise ships that are allowed to sail out of American ports, which is a very smart thing. Mm-hmm. But I am hearing that some of the cruise ships that ordinarily do Caribbean itineraries are planning to change the lineup of ports so that there's a lot more sailing mm-hmm. and a lot less stopping in ports, so they aren't disgorging 3,000 or 4,000 people onto a small island. Instead, they will be using their own private islands. So many cruise lines have private islands, which have no people living on them, but they have facilities on them. So there's a beach club, and there's a giant wave pool maybe, and there's maybe giant slides and zip lines and all that kind of thing. Mm-hmm. So that way, the passengers on the ships would not be coming into contact with people that they haven't already been in contact with.
Right.
And all the food service and so on would be handled by ship staff. Mm-hmm. So this is the hope from the cruise lines I'm hearing from. The hope is that just as cruise lines were being characterized as giant floating petri dishes at the beginning of the pandemic, if they are able to come up with really stringent health and safety practices and sanitization practices, their goal is to become the safest place to travel. And I think that could be possible because you would be in a sanitized, completely sanitized environment. And the only time you got off the ship, you would be in an equally sanitized environment.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that may be the beginning of a return to cruising, at least in the Caribbean. I know that some of the river cruise companies are actually doing quite well with bookings. And I know that some are saying that they're almost booked solid for 2021 and are already booking into 2022.
Wow.
So,
Mm-hmm.
and there's a reason for that. Cruise aficionados are passionate about cruising. And it's not unusual to be on a ship and you meet someone over dinner and you ask, oh, is this your first cruise? And they say, actually, this is my 25th cruise on this cruise line.
Mm-hmm.
There's great loyalty in the cruise world. And I know that there are people who are just chomping at the bit, waiting to get back on a ship.